Content warning. The following video contains adult themes throughout. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello, welcome. Today we are back. I'm back with our friend Jonathan Winstanley. Sir, we're here to talk. We've got some emails from you, and we are up for a chat. I will say, as the warning at the beginning of this video says, that this video is probably not suitable for the younger, and we are going to be talking about things of a sexual nature. We'll put some numbers at the end if you think you need to talk to somebody about anything we've raised. But please be forewarned, this is not going to be our normal jovial type episode. So we've got two emails that I really want to get to and I think are really important. The first one came in after the second, but I'm reading this one first, if I can ever get this mic to behave itself. So, first email. Rob, when I was 9, I was sexually abused by my uncle. This went on until I was 15. I'm now 22. You know what? I'm sorry. I thought I could do this email that I was ready. I'm not. Sorry. And that's from James. What are your thoughts on that, Win?
Obviously, there's some very emotional anxieties that James is feeling, and obviously he can't talk about, but he does want to talk about it. I'm not trying to say. I think he's giving himself an opening. He's trying his best to say to himself, I want to do this, stopping himself. Some people might think to themselves, why have you sent the email if you're not going to talk about it? But actually, I think sending the email is the most powerful thing that he can do.
Step one, isn't it?
Exactly, and he's obviously using this as an opportunity to try and open this up, and he might be even engaging what we're going to discuss, or what would we discuss about it, to see if it's an option for him to use this as an outlet. Maybe.
It is, and I think the biggest thing I would say to you, James, is we're here when you are ready.
Yeah, definitely.
We are here when you're ready, and if we can help you, we will. I think the biggest step for me is always, as we've discussed before, about not just this issue, but about a great deal of issues. The first step is to say, I need some help. Mm-hmm. And although I'm sure you're feeling a bit crap after not being able to say what you wanted to say, James, you have taken a massive step. So don't beat yourself up about it. When you are ready to tell us, you'll tell us. And we will discuss it, and we will give you... I think the one thing from both of these emails, I'll come to the second one in a minute, is they both seem to me to want an acknowledgement. Mm-hmm. They want somebody to say, we believe you, we hear you. And yeah, you started it. As when he said, some people will sit and say, well, why send it if you're not going to... Sometimes you can't, but sometimes that is the first step. So, when you're ready, James, we're here.
Yeah, we'll be your voice, I suppose, is the word, you know.
And any help we can, we will give, you know. Second email, I have to be honest, I've read this several times, and I'm going to try not to blub because it is a bit of a heart-wrencher. Hi, Rob and Winnie. Not easy for me to send this, but here I go. I was sexually abused many years ago when I was around 7 years of age. This lasted for quite some time, up until around 12 years old. My earliest memories are of a girl that lived nearby to me. I know that her dad was accused of sexual abuse against her and her siblings. I assumed that she had learned behaviours which led her to doing what she did with me. She was around 3 years older than myself, but neither of us were at an age where we should have been doing what we did. This was prolonged. I can't remember, but around about 2 years long. Around the same time, maybe a bit later, I was sexually abused at the swimming baths by another boy. I remember he was older than me. In fact, it was rape. Let's call it what it is. It wasn't the first time this happened from time to time, but not always penetrative. Sometimes it was groping, but always without my consent. This was in plain sight, in the swimming pool with everybody around me, but no one was aware. One time, a boy asked me for money after swimming, but I only had money to get myself home. In return, I was asked for sexual favours or they would attack me. I knew that it was wrong, but I did what I had to do just to survive. I never told anyone, not my friends nor for my family. I was ashamed, and I am still ashamed to this day. Throughout my youth, there were instances of other boys wanting me to undress so they could view me naked. If I didn't, they too would beat me. Sometimes they beat me even when I had done what they'd asked. I did what you had to do, and again, it was survival mode. When I look back on this now, I see that it was all about power and control. They were bullies. They wanted to control a young, innocent boy for their own gains. I became angry as I became older. I was completely misunderstood, but how could I tell anyone my story? I am ashamed. I feel guilty for the things that are out of my control. I don't feel sorry for them, but I want my revenge, even though I do not know who some of them are. I had some one-on-one counselling about 3 years ago, and it helped me immensely. But I can't, but I can't help but worry about my own children and the horrors that hide in plain sight. Is this something any of your other viewers have contacted the show about? I suppose I just don't want to feel like the only man that is walking around with these feelings inside, eating away at me every day and night. And that email was unsigned. To be honest, I don't really know where to start with that one.
My initial thought was there's so much context in there, different scenarios and circumstances.
Yep.
Yeah, I think. Do you know this? This might sound a bit strange. I understand where he's at. I understand his feelings. I understand his anger and the wanting of revenge. And it would seem to me that I think certain people are picked because they are viewed as weak. Whether they be men or women or whatever, they are viewed as their situation makes them weak. So it could be that somebody's in care or doesn't have they don't get on with the family. But this person is absolutely spot on in that this is about power. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people mistakenly think that rape is about sex. It's got nothing to do with sex. No. It's all about power. The reason they choose sex, I think, is because you will feel shame. You will feel embarrassed. You will feel unable to tell somebody else. If I walked down the street and smacked you in the face, what would stop you ringing the police? Mm. But to be raped and sexually abused, there is a shame to that. Wrongly. Mm. But society tells us that there should be a shame. There should be shame discussing a normal sex life and normal sexual activity. And I don't actually think there should be. I certainly don't think this girl, I'm assuming it's a guy. It's not actually really very clear. But either way, it makes no difference in the sense that there is no shame. It does say that, at the end, I suppose I just don't want to feel like the only man that is walking around with these feelings inside.
Yeah, I did think, I'd read it and thought, it sounded like a guy in how I read it. So, but male or female, there isn't, what have you done to feel shame? You've done nothing. And this is what, it breaks me every time because this is how things go. this is how they get away with it. Because they bank on the fact that you are isolated, that you are either, in their eyes, not my eyes, I want to make that clear, you are either the loner or you don't have the support network or nobody's going to listen to you. Or you're in the position of power. You're the police officer, you're the priest, you're the doctor, you're the... Whatever you are in a position... And nobody's going to believe you over me. I'm me. You're just a kid. You're just a woman. You're just a man in the street. Nobody's going to believe you. I'm proper. I've got a position. I think that's sort of bullshit, personally. You think of the likes of Jimmy Savile, Gary Glitter, pop stars, famous people that we know have done terrible things. Why? Why were they allowed to do that? Well, they were allowed to do that because nobody thought they would be believed. But I will say this to this guy before we can, because we're going to talk about this a bit more. We hear what you're saying. We acknowledge what you're saying.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is, we acknowledge it. I think we had a conversation a while ago, me and Win. And it was, I'd watched a documentary about the Moors murders, and I'd said in there that what I found appalling was the fact that they'd found the remains of 2 bodies, and one of the senior officers had said, well, we don't need to find the others. We've got enough to, they're going away for life, so job done. And I sat and I thought, hang on a minute. Number one, you've still got children that need burying, that need respect, that need, their families need. But also their families need to hear that you've been convicted of this against my son. Because otherwise, that family feels that what they've done doesn't matter. Their life, the life of their child doesn't matter. And for me, this seems to be, I need to say this. I need to say this, I need to be heard, and I want to assure that this guy that he is being heard. But it just throws some interesting mental health issues up. And it also, the swimming baths got me. This was in plain sight in the swimming pool with everyone around me, but nobody was aware. Go on.
That struck me. It struck me because I had a conversation with somebody 7 months ago, maybe. I was in discussion on about, because we're doing a programme on about the 70s and the 80s, and I'm saying the 70s and 80s for myself and yourself. Yeah. Whether this person is in that era, I'm not sure. And it was on about how prolific things were at that time. So, as you mentioned there, I didn't want to cut in, but you mentioned about Savile, you mentioned about Glitter and things like that. And I think we know ourselves that policing wasn't the same at that time, and that people got away with a lot of things that they can't get away with now.
Yep.
And I was talking to this friend, and he was on about a friend of his who something had happened to him in the swimming baths, exactly the same, in that same kind of manner, in plain sight. So in plain sight, for the people that are not aware, plain sight meaning everybody's around you, but nobody's aware of what's actually happening.
It's right under your nose.
It's right in your face, but you're just not aware of it. And to me, that is the ultimate power to have. You're silenced. You're doing the act in the moment with people around you. That's not something I've not heard of before. And I think in the era of 70s and 80s, and from watching programmes that I've watched, I think it was just so prolific of what was going on. And I might be jumping gun a little bit here as well when I say this, but it's always made me think, is there a reason why men of our age are committing suicide? I know we've discussed certain aspects of why that would happen. Would that be, is it success factor, of not having, you don't feel successful in life when you look back at your life? When I turned 40, I looked at what have I achieved? Is there some context to this where men are walking around with things like this? I mean, look at James's email just before that, ironically, James has mentioned, he's got something he wants to tell us. I'm not saying that's what he's going to tell us, but is there something in that where, what men could actually open up about something like that? I'm not surprised it's an unsigned
Yeah, because it is. I have to say that, I mean, there are a few thoughts on what you've just said.
Yeah, sorry, a lot of context I'll throw in.
No, listen, that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
But there was a guy, a friend of mine, has the opinion that, well, we didn't have any of this in the 80s. It's everywhere you go now, there's a paedophile. Everywhere you go. No, we did have it.
Yeah.
We just didn't report it. We didn't know about it. This is when it was happening. Mm-hmm. It was happening. Just because it didn't happen to you doesn't mean it didn't go on. But he also has some very odd views on mental... Well, nobody had mental health problems then. We did. Lots of people did. It's just not discussed, and that's the difference.
The done thing here.
I think you're right. It is the ultimate power to say, look, even when there's people around you, nobody's coming to help. Nobody's looking.
Terrific.
You are just there. But I think but this is where hindsight kicks in. Would you... And I suppose it's an interesting question for us all. Because of where we are now and how far we've come, would you notice something in a swimming pool that wasn't appropriate? Would you notice more? Are we more aware than we were?
I don't know, and something's just come into my mind. I don't know if you've seen this. Would I notice it? Maybe not, because I'm not looking for it as such. Although having children now, I'm looking at different things differently. I'll be honest, my eyes are completely all the time. So I am looking at different things. Did you see the one at snooker last year or year before? And there were a young boy, probably about 12, bizarre. And Ken Doherty were talking on the snooker programme on BBC. And this guy stood behind him. And the camera sort of like settled on them, because I think they were in the back shot of the frame. And he starts nibbling this young lad's ear. And he looks... It's off. It's astonishing to see. And he looks insatiable. Now, I don't know if that's his son, who he could be doing that with or whatever, but the young lad were like frozen on spot. And then he looked at camera and he saw it and he sort of backed off a little bit. And you could tell his face. And a load of stuff went out on Twitter and people said, we need to find this guy, we need to know what's going on, etc. I don't know what ever happened with that. But that, to me, is the point of plain sight. Yeah. Is the not caring and doing what you're doing, And so when I saw that really made me stand up and think, wow, would I be aware of it in a swimming pool? Probably not. Do you know what's going on under the water? No, you don't.
No, you don't. You don't.
I don't know.
But I suppose, as you say, that is the ultimate tool to isolate somebody, is to say nobody cares. Yeah. Nobody cares about you. Yeah. I can do whatever I want, whenever I want. Nobody cares about you. It's utter bollocks, but you believe it. Mm-hmm. You do believe it. You believe it because that's what they're saying. And that's what they're saying repeatedly. And ultimately, very much like fake news and all the rest of it, it then becomes the law. It becomes what you believe because it's repeated to you so much. I think what troubles me it's easy. I think the thing is, it's easy for me to sit here and say, well, how did nobody notice? How did nobody see? How did nobody put two and two together that this guy's, according to him, getting more and more angry? How? But I also find it interesting, for want of a better word, that the girl abuses and then that's followed up by other people. And is that the girls told these other lads, this is what I've done? Or are they just spotting somebody that has been abused? Because you do see that a lot. I was abused by so-and-so, and then I got married, and then he abused me, and then I got married, and I left him, and I went... And they seem to have... It's a bit like they've got a sign on them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think you mentioned it when you were saying at the beginning, when you said about vulnerabilities. Now, that could be vulnerabilities of different kinds of inner nature.
Yeah.
But because it's mentioned in here about a bullying perspective, that could be somebody who looks just weaker than others. Could be somebody who's getting bullied, or they've noticed them being bullied. And But again, everything leads back to the power and control. It's the understanding of, and I'm with you on this because I've watched enough programs to understand now that rape is not always the act.
Yep.
It's the power, it's the control, it's the narcissism, it's the, that to me is more, the power and control is probably more about the bullying.
Yep.
So I think that goes hand in hand. It's them wanting to control this person.
It is
and be in control of them. And again, I don't know how old it's 12 years old, up to around 12 years old, sorry. So from the years of 7 up to around 12 years old. In that time of that happening, at that age, I don't know how you would understand how to talk about that because, and I'm talking like a mental capacity, if you're younger, I mean, us being older and sitting on the show and we talk quite openly and frequently about things, mental health issues or whatever else, who's to say that this is not a person that then takes that on board? Thinking that this is just the normal, is this the normal sort of thing? Albeit you still wouldn't go home and tell your parents, or you wouldn't tell anybody else around you. I don't know. I'm trying to think of men at an older age. If this has happened to other men, if you've carried that for silence for so long and that shame for so long, where's it going to go? I don't think you could even talk about it at 7 years of age. Never mind.
It doesn't. Where you go with it is you become, as this guy did, you become angry. Mm-hmm. You then have compensatory behaviour. So they've picked on me because I'm weak. They've abused me because they see me as weak. So I'm going to sort that out. Mm. I am then going to become the hard man, and I will fight, and I will have anybody, it's compensatory behaviour. He left me because I've put weight on, so I'm going to be ultra slim, 6-pack pecs, compensatory behaviour. The problem is, who knows what compensatory behaviour is? Who knows? I mean, some of the mental health issues that we discuss, you would need a really big insight, which is why we do what we do, because people need to talk about this. Mm. We need to know what the difference is and what the signs are of who to help and when to help. One that I came across recently was toxic bond. And I thought, made perfect sense. But at the time, I was like, never heard that phrase before. And I'm fairly up on mental health. But I think ultimately, it is about power, it is about control. And the compensatory, this behaviour that this guy has then gone on to, he then becomes the hard man.
But I suppose as well, though, anger is an emotion.
Yeah.
So it's a kind of... I mean, how do you carry it? It'll be embarrassment, I would imagine,
Yeah.
Or it's a shame. So you've got shame, you've got embarrassment, you've got them feelings of, 12 years old. I don't know if you remember, but I remember 12, 13, 14. I think the age of 14 was quite difficult. We talked about on show.
Yeah.
First show that we did together.
Yeah.
I think I spoke about how I found being around that age very difficult.
Yeah.
Very angry. Just not understanding hormones, at that age. So for me, this happening up to around 12 years old, and then you're going into high school, and then you're mixing with other boys. And if you've got this inside and you're still not talking about it, it's going to transpire into anger, isn't it? It's going to exacerbate.
You have to do something with it.
Yeah,
it eats you or you eat it. That's how it is. I think what I'm curious about is what would happen if he'd said, "Mum, Dad," And I think I've never been in this situation, so forgive me in advance. But I suppose the feeling that you'd done something wrong, even though you hadn't, mm-hmm. And would Dad then look at me differently? Mm-hmm. I haven't been in this situation, and I'm not suggesting this is the same, but when I came out as gay, I did wonder how my parents would look at it, because it's with another boy. And that's different, and that's not normal, as we're told.
Yeah.
It made no difference at all. As long as I'm happy, that's all my dad ever wanted. In fact, he went out of his way to embrace when I got married. He was the only one of my family that came up and went, congratulations, and when he first saw me after our wedding. But I wonder what this lad's dad would have thought, what his mum would have thought. He mentioned siblings that he's not told. And I think that fear is what these abusers rely on.
That's the control. That's what I'm saying. It's that reliance, and you said it, and you said it really well. It's that reliance of them.
Usually do.
Yeah. I was waiting for some feedback. It's that reliance of, you will not go and tell somebody else, you know. I mean, the parents would be destroyed, the family would be destroyed, you know. I think I can say in my mind that I don't feel like I know anybody that stepped forward and come to me and said, this has happened to me, this sort of a situation. But how many has it happened to? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's the not saying things. I mean, I've got to be careful with certain things that I say because I've got friends through friends, and I know that unfortunately somebody took their own life a few years ago, and there was a hearing of that may have happened. I'm not going to sit here and say that it did because I have no idea of that. But is there something going around with this where people don't have that opportunity to open? I mean, it's like a perfect storm, you know, and I hate saying that. But something like this and suicide are a perfect storm for one another. Do you agree?
Completely, because you can't talk about the abuse. You can't talk about the fact that you want to kill yourself because you don't. So what do you do? What do you then do? You can either take what some people wrongly think is the easy way out. Believe me, having been there and tried that, it's not. Suicide is not an easy way to do anything. Or you try and deal with it. I don't know. To be honest, I don't know if I could deal with it. I think of myself as quite an assertive guy when I need to be. Mm-hmm. But I'm sure at 12 years old, I wasn't. I know I wasn't. I know I was bullied. I know I was picked on. I know I was called different. I don't know when that ends, actually. I'm not saying it still goes on, but at some point it ended.
No, something comes to an end.
You know, you become an adult, but I say that, then I have had homophobia. Mm-hmm. I have had arguments with people where they then say, well, it's because you're fat. And it's... But now I just think, is that all you've got? Your best thing is to criticise how I look or the fact that I'm gay. It baffles me. But I think at 7 or 12 years old, would I have the nous, the sense, the understanding, more than anything else, that this is wrong? Yes. Even he acknowledges that he knew that this was wrong at that age. But what do you then do?
Do you know, I've got a thought in my head, and I remember when I can't remember what I mean, 8 or 9, I think. This is a little bit deep, I suppose, but it's again on these programs that
That's why we're here.
Yeah. So I can't. Do you remember? I don't know if you know much about killers and serial killers, but there was a guy called Robert Black.
Yes.
Okay. So I remember when I used to go to Morley swimming baths as a kid. We always get on a coach. We used to go up.
There we go.
Up Cherwell Hill.
Yep.
And I remember the story of Sarah Harper that had gone out for a loaf of bread and she never returned. Yep. We used to go past on the bus, past the shop. The shop used to be on the corner. And we used to go past, and I remember us all as kids going up to the window and all looking out as we'd go past. And I remember it just terrified me, completely and utterly terrified me, because I used to go to shop for my mum and dad quite a lot as a kid. I'm sure you did, as we all did, go get a packet of cigs or you go and get whatever with a note. And it really made me think about it. Anyway, it all came out and it was Robert Black that had abducted her in his van. And it turned out he'd done it to numerous children. And I watched this programme. So I watched this programme, Robert Black was on it. There was another guy, and I can't remember his name, it was down in London. Sidney Cook, I think it was.
Sidney Cook.
Is that right?
Yeah, prolific.
Prolific paedophile killer.
Yeah.
And I think he was doing it from fairs and things like that. He'd grab children.
And he used to work around
yeah, so he'd move around the country. And it wasn't until I watched these programmes and I got right emotional, really what emotional about it. I feel emotional saying it and thinking how lucky you are that something like that doesn't happen. Like, there's the one thing here with this scenario where you've got a young boy who's been abused and the power, and we talk about the power and control, but the ultimate power and control is murder.
Yeah.
And all these things that were going on at that time, and I look back on it, and it is actually quite terrifying, because you're going out on your BMX on a morning. I go out at 8 o'clock in the morning, friends will come and knock on the door, you come out on your BMX, off we go, up to Woods. I could be there for 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
Like it's going to go
Quite
down.
Easy.
Yeah. Not a care in the world.
Right, you get out from under my feet. I've got floor to do.
I need you out. Go. Yeah, exactly that.
Be back here for your tea.
Do we live at St.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And don't you bring that. And don't you make a mess when you. Yeah.
And that's all it takes. I mean, I were in like the wilderness, in the woods, and not a care in the world. And then it's not until in later life you look back at these programs and you see everything that's gone on, and not just the Savile thing, which I think were horrific in itself, but these people, I can't call them people because they're not, are they?
No, they're not.
Monsters.
They're not.
That are hiding in plain sight, that are doing what they're doing. And I'm not saying that this is... I'm trying to bring the two together. I think of myself at that age and when I was going out, what horrors there are that are out there. People like this, Robert Black, picking people up, going for a loaf of bread or whatever. I think it's terrifying. And to bring me to that point of the end comment, which I read on here, which stuck out, obviously, because of my daughter, Faith, he's mentioned somewhere about his own children.
Yeah. And
for me, I mean, you're going to live in absolute fear, aren't you? Because you know full well. I mean, my eyes are never off her, ever. I think I might have mentioned it on the show last time, I can't remember. Yeah. We got a Scarborough, she's putting some coins in a machine, and she just literally filtered off. And I lost my shit completely. And Ellen were like, calm down. I'm like,
red alert, shield.
Horrific, yeah. And I've gone from there to there. I've gone to the scenarios from what I'm talking about, these programmes. And I'm listening to tears. I'm like, and it's a constant fear. It's an awful feeling. And it's things like this when you read these emails and you just think...
I think there's a few things there. So
sorry,
no, it's a conversation. I have to say, I've seen several true crime documentaries. I do love a true crime. Sidney Cook was particularly nasty in that he did commit murders. He did abuse children, then murder them. But he also, on a couple of instances, invited other paedophiles he knew to come and do things in his flat together. And it was just abhorrent. It was just... I remember that most of his convictions came from a guy that shared his cell. He specifically said, I want to share his cell. Or he had shared his cell at some point and had written to this chief inspector and said, listen, this is what he's telling me. And this guy's laying underneath Sidney Cook in a cell, writing down every single thing he says. And apparently this guy is going into the minutest of details, to the point where after several months this guy says, you're going to have to get me out of here, because if you leave me, I'll kill him. But this is all then used in court. And this guy, I mean, most prisoners... Excuse me. Something wrong with my ear today. Most prisoners have the we won't grass rule, the no lagging rule. that did not apply to this guy because, as you said, he wasn't a guy; he was a monster. I don't know about having children. And as much as I understand what this guy's saying, and I understand exactly what you're saying, I think there's a couple of things that spring to mind. One being, you can't visit your trauma and your pain and your upset and your anger onto your child. Because I think the danger then becomes you wrap that child in so much cotton wool that they don't have the childhood.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It does.
As much as I can sit here and say, well, my childhood was crap because of X, Y, and Z, and you could do the same. You could also sit here and say, my childhood were amazing because X, Y, and Z. Once you wrap faith up in that bundle of cotton wool because this might happen, you stop that child living. You stop them being children. You stop them exploring. You stop them knowing and learning and enjoying. So I think that is don't get me wrong. I'm not saying then you need to overcompensate by going the complete opposite way, but at the same time you need to be aware that it's probably not the worst thing. She's walked off around the corner. She's probably around the corner. You know? By all means, get to red alert when she's not round the corner. But I also think that our mental ability is that we always go to the worst.
I'm going to say you jump from you go right to end, don't you?
Yeah. Oh, I need a blood test. Why? Your blood's aren't right. It's cancer. I'm dying of cancer. Oh my God, I've got. No, you're just a bit anemic. We need to give you some. It's usually the simplest.
Yeah.
Judge Judy used to say, "Keep it simple, stupid." And the simplest answer is usually the right one. Mm-hmm. It's when you get into it could be this and it could be... And I think you are going to be more aware if you've been in that situation. Mm-hmm. I think you are going to be more switched on. You are going to be more... You are going to be looking in the swimming pool. You are going to be looking at people through a very different lens than everybody else's. And if nothing else, I think that is enough. You know what you're looking for. You know what... So when it comes to that child, let them kids enjoy. Yes. But I also think that you can't protect them from everything.
You can't, and...
You can mitigate, but you can't do everything.
And in that, so I've got a couple of things going around in my head, so I'm trying to empathise here. So obviously I'm thinking of when you're coming out of the week, and she, hi Rob, and then we had hi Rob until Saturday, Sunday. She kept saying it, what can I say?
Just have that effect, she just love.
But so we've got some new neighbours coming in, and she ran out the door. I mean, obviously we're behind her. We don't like run out the road at that age. But she's waving to him. She's like waving, hi. It's the innocence of youth, and it's that innocence of youth that I think is quite frightening. And I know this has always existed, and it's only been more. You mentioned it. People think it's more prolific now. It's not. It's because it gets reported more. It's because we're more aware of it. It's because we go on social media and see it more. We understand it more. But when I was reading this, because we both said at the beginning, there's a lot of context in this, and how you break that down. Are we talking about 3 separate instances? So, because we've got a girl, we've got a swimming pool incident, or at the baths, or whatever's happened there, and then he's talking about there was other people, or people went to see him. Because in the Lord of, I'm thinking. I'm trying to play devil's advocate. Yeah.
He's got everybody's.
He's got everybody's. Yeah. There's a lot of people involved in that. There's not just one.
But again, that takes us back to you're wearing the sign. People can see that.
That's right. That's true. That's very true. Yeah.
I read this originally and thought he got abused up until the age of 12. And it's only when I reread it that actually when he's talking about that, he's talking, I think, in reference to the girl. She abused him till from 7 to 12. And then he goes on to say, throughout my youth, there were instances of other boys wanting me to undress so they could view me naked. If I didn't, they would beat me. Sometimes they'd beat me either way. So even throughout his youth, I don't think 12 is the cutoff. I think this went on longer and much more prolific than maybe we realise. But I also, going back to what you said about the innocence of youth, and hi Rob, girls got taste, what can I say? But waving to neighbours, yes, it is innocence of youth, and that's scary. It's also very beautiful.
Oh yeah, it is.
You know, and that's the thing you've got to get in your head.
It's the cat. I know, and
it's not easy.
No,
and I'm not a father,
right.
and
no,
I know it's not easy.
You're right. I mean, I'd be procrastinating if she were. There's no bad children, in my opinion, because they're too young to understand.
Children are born innocent.
Yeah. But she's so caring, she's loving. There's a lot of There's a lot of that I should be appreciating much more. Ellen's mentioned that and all. And it is me constantly. I didn't realise how anxious I was until I had Faith, with certain scenarios. And she's saying hello to somebody, she's talking to somebody. It's lovely and they'll come over. But it is like things like this that then make me think of sinister things, which you shouldn't do. I mean, it's all right. Don't stop the moment from happening, I suppose, I'm thinking.
Yeah.
It's all fine. You're there. She's safe. Don't worry. Society makes us this way.
Yeah.
This email, that is society. Be it whenever it was in the past or if it is in the present. It's the same thing. It's society that makes you do that. I'll tell you one that upset me yesterday. So we took her swimming yesterday, ironically, and me and Helen took her in baby pool and we were swimming. And last week, she kind of hasn't grasped there's water. And if you see something on the bottom, you can't put your head underneath and pick it up. So she'd done it last week and she frightened herself and she wanted to get out of the pool. So when we were going yesterday, Ellen says to me, I hope she don't panic about going in the pool. She was all right, we got her in, she seemed to be fine. Tried to lay her on the back and tried to lay her on the front and she screamed a little bit. So, okay, no worries, she's got her armbands on and stuff like that. Then she does it again. She put her head down at the water and she put her head straight under and choked a little bit. And I grabbed her and it's that instant you can't stop her from doing it.
Yep.
And then in a way she needs to understand that, unfortunately she's got to do that. And then she says to us, she was like scared. She kept saying scared. So I thought, does she understand the concept of scared? So once we got out of the pool and everything else, went home, never mentioned it again. And I put her to bed last night. I like to put her to bed on the night and I give her a story. So we're getting to bath, Helen gets her ready, and then I go and sit in her little room and read her a story. And I said, what story do you want? I want the Gruffalo, so I read her the Gruffalo. And she said it again. She went halfway through it, she went scared. And I went, what are you scared of? And I put the book down and I had her right sit with her. And although she's only just older than 2, and I said, you have nothing to be frightened of in this world. Because A, you've got me, and B, you've got your mum. And I could see cogs were ticking in her mind. And and I said, just try to, and you try not to talk to them like adults, but you can't help it because it's just a natural way of talking,
Yeah.
And I said, listen to me, promise. And she looked and she went, promise. And I thought, she doesn't understand what I'm saying, I know I'm nearly in floods. And I didn't want to cry in front of her, not because I don't want to be emotional in front of my daughter, because I will be as she gets older. I just don't want her to see me that way and then put scared and emotion together, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I get that completely.
And it is things like this, and it is that worry about your daughter. And I laid her down last night in a cot, and I was stroking her face, and I says, whilst ever I walk this earth, I promise you, you have nothing to fear. And I mean that sincerely, and I know she doesn't understand that yet. And I tickled her chin, and she was giggling and stuff. I went down there, and I said to her, and I said, that's probably the most worrying thing that worries. It's knowing that she could be frightened of things, and the worries, and it's things like this,
I think the beauty of that, though, is she's learning, for instance, in the pool, she's there learning, and even though she feels scared and she's worried about what she's doing, she is safe. Mm-hmm. She is safe, and she's safe because you're there. Mm-hmm. But I think we're back to you can't Can't wrap her in cotton wool.
No,
I mean, I will be the cool uncle that's, she's stuck drunk somewhere and she needs picking up. I'll do it. I can't ring me dad. He'll go spare. I'll come. Fine, ring me. I'll come. That's. But there's nothing. There's nothing that's going to stop her living her life. And although I listen, I get it. I am the guy that walks into a bar with my husband and knows who the biggest guy in the room is, where the doors are. Exactly. If it kicks off, this is where we need to be. Yeah. This is where, and I can do that absolutely paralytic. I know exactly where I am and who's doing what. Adrian, so much, no. I often call him the dumbest, smartest bloke I've ever met, or the smartest dumb bloke I've ever met, because he just doesn't. He is so laid back and so carefree. I'll be right. I would love to be that, or more like that. Never gonna happen. Never gonna happen. Built differently. But also, I think life has taught me that it's different, or that my experiences have taught me that this is the way to be. And although I understand what you're saying about how faith is and your worries and concerns about faith, I also think you've got to let faith be faith. And faith will tell you, to a point, what she is, where she wants to be, and what she's comfortable with. And
she's very independent. So I can't see me putting my foot down and saying, you can't stop her from doing certain things, and she wants to be forward in doing then things. It's just obviously when you read about this kind of context, this is obviously bringing it back to what we were talking about originally. It's only when you read this kind of context. But in my heart of hearts, I know that this was the sort of thing that was happening back then in the 80s and 70s, if that's the era. I know that it's happening now. So realistically, I think you're right. I think we just fit into the society or the world as it is. We can't change that. We can just protect it.
Yeah.
But as you say, it's that overkill, isn't it?
It is, and I think it's the gut reaction. And I think what really breaks me reading this email, when I look back on this now, I see that it was all about power and control. They were bullies. They wanted to control a young innocent boy for their own games. I became angry as I became older. Was completely misunderstood. How could I tell anyone my story? I am ashamed. I feel guilty for the things that are out of my control. I don't feel sorry for them, but I want my revenge. This guy is walking about. I mean, there's part of me where I'm pulling what's left of my hair out, saying, don't make excuses for them. Because he does. I assume it's learned behaviour. Makes a difference. If she's abusing you, she's abusing you. It's as simple as that. The who, what, when and why and how she did it and how she learnt it and all the rest of it makes no difference. Her being abused does not justify what she's done to you. It doesn't.
Yeah.
Maybe it's understandable. Maybe you can. It figures that that's where she's learnt it, but it makes no difference. Excuse me. I think the biggest thing for me is that this guy is walking about feeling guilty, feeling ashamed, and feeling angry. He wants revenge, and I think my biggest issue with all of this is how he feels now. I was thinking about forgiveness yesterday.
Oh, do you know, I was going to... No, I'm pleased on that point, because I was going to speak about forgiveness. And is it a case of finding forgiveness in a certain way. I'm going to mention it about your faith or how you deal with that. Or...
It is, but what I actually thought of yesterday... So, as a Catholic, we are taught that to be forgiven, you've got to apologise, you've got to acknowledge what you've done, your sin, and you've got to make a firm purpose of amendment that you won't do it again. But I was sat actually thinking yesterday, because there's various people in my life that have gone over the line of pissing me off. And over the line of the shutters come down, the drawbridge is up, that's it, I'm done. And I constantly have this debate, let's say, instead of argument with my husband, that just forgive them and move on. And I sit and say, I can't forgive them because they haven't said they're sorry. But I actually think there's two forgivenesses here. I actually think that the heavier forgiveness is the one that we don't give. So, for example, you haven't apologised for upsetting me for being whatever that you've done. And as a result, I can't forgive you. You don't carry that. You just go, okay, fine. Off I go. I'm going to live my life. I then carry about with me the weight of the fact that I'm not forgiving you. And it's a bit like a grudge. I've got this grudge against you. So I've now got to carry this weight with me. So I can't forgive you because you've not said sorry. So I'll keep hold of this until you're ready. That does me no good. At all. If anything, it weighs me down. Mentally, physically, it weighs me down. Emotionally, spiritually, whatever way you look at it, I'm weighed down by this thing that you've not said sorry for, that I can't forgive you for because you've not said sorry. And yesterday, rereading these emails, and it was this email in particular that we're discussing, the unsigned one from this guy, that I suddenly, while rereading, thought, do you know what? I think there is a second type of forgiveness. And that forgiveness is, you come to terms with whatever it is. In this case, the fact that these people have abused you. You don't have to go and tell them you've forgiven them. But you have to forgive yourself. You have to say, do you know what? I forgive myself. And I forgive them. Because until you do, you're carrying around that weight. And sometimes that weight is heavier than what they've actually done. Because that weight never goes anywhere. If anything, I think the longer you hold it, the heavier it gets. Because you just grow and grow and grow into a resentment. You become quite pissed off. In fact, I think, and no, I don't think, I know, I've done this myself and thought, cannot believe it's been 6 months and he still hasn't apologised. Can't believe that he had so little respect for me. And I know I've done that. I know I have. Who does that help? Absolutely nobody. If anything, I'm making myself poorly. I know I am. Is it easy to do? No, not for a second. And I'm not suggesting any of this is easy to do. But forgiveness in this sense isn't them coming to you and saying, I'm sorry I did this, and you saying, I forgive you. Because that's a forgiveness for them. They gain. Because you're taking the weight off them. Whether they have become paedophiles, whether they've become serial abusers, or maybe they just think this is what you did as kids because you were learning about. I don't believe that, and I'm not trying to belittle what this guy's gone through at all. But it always amazes me how two people can have very different perspectives of one thing. Yeah. It weren't abuse, we were just mucking about. we were kids. That's what you did. I weren't bullying you. Yeah, I called him a couple of names. But you don't know the effect of what you've said and what your actions have had on somebody else. You have no idea. It's never going to happen. You'll never get it. So to sit and say that he says he's been abused. As far as I'm concerned, that's it. That's how he's experienced it. That's how it is. End of. I'll use that phrase instead of he says it. What he's experienced is what he's telling us. They may never come to this guy and say, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. The chances of that, even if Sidney Cook isn't convicted in prison, never going to apologise. Never going to happen. Because to him, what he's doing is normal.
He's a psychopath.
Yeah.
Absolutely. He's
devoid of moral...
don't have a moral compass.
No,
as such.
he's got nothing. But I'm not saying you have to be a psychopath to not come. Not everybody that doesn't come to you is necessarily a psychopath. I think it may be it comes with narcissistic tendencies. But I'm not suggesting for a second, before you all email in, I'm not suggesting if you've never apologised for something you've done, then you're a psychopath. That's not what I'm saying. But ultimately, you're carrying this around. You're the one that is dealing with this every single day, and they're not. Well, we assume they're not. You've got no way of knowing. What we do know is this is being carried about by this guy, and the only person suffering from that is him. And then his family. And then, I say family, do you know, I say family know. I think the family will suffer even if they don't know. I think if his wife doesn't know, his wife will know.
It's because of the way that, I suppose, it's the emotion that's coming out in anger.
Yeah.
As they say, it's how you come across to others.
Completely. If he is... Go on.
No, I'm going to say it's that not understanding that person, isn't it? It's because
completely.
So-and-so's a bit of a dickhead.
Yeah. Well, he's a dickhead because X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, but because you don't know about X, Y, and Z because
exactly.
He's been silenced.
Completely. So, even if his wife, his child, his friends, even if they don't know, it does affect them. If you want to move on, I think you have to get yourself to a place, and I'm not suggesting this is easy by any way, shape or form. It's not. You have to get yourself to a place where you can say, do you know what? I'm done with this. Even though you haven't said sorry. Even though I don't think you are sorry. For myself, I forgive you. I accept what happened. Rightly or wrongly, I accept it. And now I'm done. I forgive you, because until you do that, you are carrying around with you a weight that you will never, ever be able to lift off. And I think, if anything, psychologically speaking, I think that gives you then the control back. Rape, sexual abuse is about power. Mm-hmm. You have that power. You have the power to forgive. You have the power to hold on to this for the rest of your life. And you have the power to allow this to affect how you are with your wife, with your kids, with whatever. With all the people around you who know or don't know or whatever. You have the power. You have that opportunity to take the power back. And I think ultimately that is the goal that you need to be aiming for. You cannot continue. You say that you had one-on-one counselling 3 years ago, but I can't help but worry. Go back. Go back. Mm-hmm. go back and speak some more. Tell people your tale. I think I understand the fear of telling family, but I also... do you know, it says a lot about this person. I'm going to go off on a slight tangent here. You've gone through all this, and your first thought is, I don't want to tell anybody because I don't want to upset them. I mean, seriously. In one respect, how ridiculous is that? But in the other respect, how immense is that? Because you've gone through all this, and you're still worried about mum, dad, sisters, brothers, whatever. So I find that quite amazing. Not that you'll give yourself credit for that, but it is. But I wonder if you're not saying anything to those around you not because of shame, but because unconsciously you know that then means they're going to have to look at who they are and what they have done or haven't done. And I think that is the biggest question I've got.
I suppose it's quite difficult because if it is a case of, if you're not telling your family because of, I'm trying to say, it's not, I don't think so much what they've done wrong. It's more a case of, and look at it from this perspective that you just mentioned there, because I didn't think of it as deeply as that, where you're not telling somebody because of the pain that you're going to give them. So, for example, if...
Let me just stop you there. It's not pain you're giving them, is it?
No, it's not. But what I'm saying...
They will experience it as pain.
So it's not his fault.
Yeah.
It's not their fault.
No.
Because it's out of everybody's control.
Yeah.
If I'm right there. And I'm trying to put it in a context. I'm not putting it in my daughter's context. I can't in my head. Because I'm trying to think of how that would be.
Knock yourself out.
So, but I can't, in my mind, I can't think of it.
Whatever way you can...
But somebody coming to you and telling you, this happened to me, this was real, this is what I went through. Yeah. So I'll tell you what, let's think of it as, say one of my mates came up to me and said, look, I need to tell you something. We need to talk down like men do, that'd be a good scenario. We need to talk about this. I need to tell you something that I've been thinking about all this time and I've been carrying it round. I think as the person, I would probably feel a little bit of guilt for not, even though it's out of my control, but then I would hope that person didn't think it was any of my fault, because if I don't know anything about something, I can't change that thing.
Completely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I suppose the broader picture, looking at it now, how you've said it, there is a broader picture of people. I suppose it's like ripples in a pool.
Completely.
You drop a stone in, it's all them people it's affecting as it goes around. As it moves out, it's affecting so many people that you tend to keep it to yourself, which is the win for the person that's done it. Completely. Because nobody's ever going to know about it. It's
completely, and that's why they do it.
Yeah, it's quite a deep.
It is, but not telling your family. I think not saying something to your family. I understand the shame bit. I get the shame bit. I think I would feel ashamed. But what they then have to deal with is for them to look at. If they want to feel guilty or not feel guilty, or they have to go through that process. And I don't think you can be... You said that pain you're not causing that pain. You're not telling them to cause them pain. And that, to me, it is about intention. Yeah. Intention does come into it at some point, because if I'm telling you something because it happened to me, and I need to tell you this because otherwise I'm not going to get anywhere. I'm never going to progress. This is never going to go away until I say, which I guess is why he's emailing us, because he wants to say, this is what this is. This is what's happened. I need somebody to acknowledge this. Not telling your family because of shame, I understand. But to not tell them because you don't want to cause them pain is a bit of a blurred line for me. Because, one, you don't know how they'll respond. I think, and that's the danger, isn't it? And I think that's ultimately what we're all afraid of. You don't know how somebody will respond. But I also then think that you run the risk of isolating them further by not telling them. Because they then don't understand your behaviour. They don't understand why you are angry. They don't understand why you are as you are. Because I'm sure that I've had anger in my family, my wider family. I've come across people that are angry in day-to-day life. I think everybody has. You write them off as being dickhead, as you said. Because that's what you do. Is that fair? No. But we do it anyway, because we don't know better. I don't think not telling your parents, your family, siblings, whatever, whoever it is, helps you at all. I think it's another power that these people have over you. I think it's another power that you need to take back. And I don't think anything is gained by not saying anything. I think there's a lot to be gained by telling them.
I do think...
I understand it, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I don't think it helps.
But I do think, and we're going to come to this point when we come to the end of this email, but I do think, and again, ironically, that the email that we've had prior to that by James, I do think that there's more of this out there.
Completely.
And I'm putting it out there. I'm not saying that every young man that commits suicide, you know, say commit suicide. I don't know if that's because somebody said that they changed the name of it. But I know
it's commit suicide.
Yeah, okay.
Take your own life.
Yeah. I just don't want to offend you.
Yeah, no.
The
PC police don't get through the emails. Don't worry.
I just want to. I want to know. I'd like to understand. Is this something that is more prolific than we think? Because me and you had a conversation there about Sidney Cook. We talked about Robert Black and things like that. I know it seems quite far away from, but I don't think it is. How many men of that era, if that's an era that we're thinking, if it's like the kind of the 80s, 70s era, even the 90s, how many of these men are walking around with this, you know, because no one's ever going to talk about this.
No.
Nobody is. You can see this here, you know, nobody is going to talk about that. And you could have all these people walking around together and nobody speaking about a thing. And I think it's just, after reading James's email, and I sincerely hope, by the way, that James comes back and opens up a little bit more, maybe this may give him that opportunity. And James, if that is not your story, I sincerely apologise, because that's just, you know, I'm just trying to...
He says I was sexually abused by my uncle.
Yeah.
This went on until I was 15, so...
I want him to give that story, you know, kind of...
It is for him to give.
Yeah. But there could be something in this where... There's a lot more other people that can come forward from it. And it's that feeling of not being... Because, as we said, power and control, you're in silo. You're constantly... You've got nobody else around you. Nobody's talking about it. That's your story to own. How many people are owning that story?
But then take that point you've just made back to not telling your family.
Yeah, because it never goes any
You're
further.
still in silo.
You're
still not talking about it.
Yeah, no, that's a very fair point.
And that person... In James's case, his uncle. In this guy's case, the many people, they don't have that right. Mm-hmm. They didn't have the right to do what they've done. Yeah. They didn't have the right to tell others, to then do it as a group, to enjoy what they were doing. They don't have that right. And they certainly don't then have the right to decide who or who you don't tell. Yeah. And quite frankly, sing it from the rooftops for me. You are not. Silence helps the oppressor.
Oh, it's a win for them, yeah.
If we... I'm going off on a tangent, but it'll explain my point. If we see somebody being beaten up in the street and saying nothing, that only helps the person that's doing the beating.
Yeah. No, good way of putting it. It's a good context.
It only helps that person. It does not help the victim or the survivor, whatever word you want to say. It does not help the person getting beaten.
You're feeding into other, aren't you?
You are. And by not telling mum, dad, brother, sister, aunties, uncle, whatever, or even those immediate to you, by not telling them, the only people you help are these abusers. And quite frankly, anything else, in my view, is bollocks. It just is. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it's a fun conversation. And I suppose factors that you would then need to take into account are how old are your parents? What's the health like? Is this going to... So there are
other factors.
Yes.
Yeah, there is. And
but the principle of not telling somebody because you're ashamed, because you can't, because...
Yeah.
I think I go back to our waiting for the right time. There's never a right time. Mm-hmm. There's only time. Mm-hmm. Silence helps the oppressor. That's what... We've just celebrated yesterday. So this is Friday the 7th? 8th, 9th. Friday the 9th of March. Put my teeth in, we'll try all that again. Friday the 9th of May, 2025. Yesterday we celebrated VE Day. The 8th year anniversary of victory in Europe, and we also got a new Pope. Amazing day. Silence helped Hitler do what he wanted to do. The fact that nobody stood up and said, hang on a minute.
Yeah.
The fact that nobody stood up and said, you're about to murder 6 million Jews, that's fine. Nobody stood until we went to war. The slightly different context from this, but the point is, silence helps nobody but that person, the abuser, the perpetrator. And silence in... I'm going to get myself upset here. Silence in this case does so much damage to mental health. James still feels silent. He's not ready. I can live with I'm not ready. I can't live with I'm never going to tell anybody because I can't.
And that's where, this is what I was saying about James and how many other people are there. Because if you've got James who's nearly saying it, how many people are not saying it?
Yeah.
And then we've got a person who said it but has not named themselves. There's there's a mystery around everything of it, which I totally understand. I totally understand that from a man's perspective. I really do. I mean, women is obviously we have rape with women, and people think it's much more more prolific, or we hear about it more. You don't hear much about men because a lot of men don't report it. So there's no reporting. There's no evidence of KPIs that you can measure against how many men have been raped in certain time zones, or in eras.
Yeah.
I want to give my own tangent, and I want to bring it back to the table, as we spoke about originally, about the plain sight thing.
Yep.
One of my friends said to me, I used to go walking where I used to work up Denby Dale. So for those viewers who are not aware of Denby Dale, it's like in the middle of nowhere. It's moors, basically, around. It's
Yorkshire, because we've had a fair few emails from America.
Yeah.
We're in God's own country.
Yes.
We are in Yorkshire. We have whippets and rickets and things like that.
Flat
caps and pigeons and things. But yes.
Yeah, so I used to go walking out up because I worked in a village called Clayton West. So I used to go walking up on the moors, and I'd take a head torch with me, my headphones on, wrapped up with all my walking gear, and I'd go out and have a really good hike for 2 hours. And I used to do it to clear my head before I went to work. It's quite a stressful job. I used to love doing it. I like going out for a walk. I enjoy my time. I like doing it then because there's nobody about. Anyway, somebody once said to me, they said, well, do you not get scared? And I said, what have I got to be scared of? And they said, well, you're walking in the middle of nowhere, on the moors at
Pitch
4
black.
o'clock, 4 in the morning with an head torch on. I mean, come on. And I had to explain to them, I said, and they got it straight away, and I said, serial killers don't hide in bushes and wait for someone like me to come traipsing along at 4 in the morning, jump out and get me. Just the same as this. They don't hide in alleys in the dark, waiting for you. No. These things are happening in plain sight. It's your next door neighbour. It's the person in the swimming pool. It's the girl down the street. It's, and I think that is a really important point to make within this email. When I think about that and I think about the plain sight thing when people are saying, but if you're out in the malls, no, they're not waiting there. They're in the pub. They're in the next door. They're here. They're there.
Yeah,
they're
at work. They're in school. They are the bloke that you sit next to in maths. They are the
and in some contexts, they're the people that you actually know.
Yeah.
In James's case,
Yeah.
And that to me is, I'm very, very intrigued, as I always am on this show, Rob. I'm very, very intrigued to see if we can get him more feedback or.
Well, let's make a pledge then. Let's make a pledge for two things. So let's pledge that. One, if you want to get in touch, as always, you can. Email's on your screen. hail@hailtalkradio.com. If you can relate to our unsigned email or to James, let's hear from you. But two, let's also then make a pledge that for every one we get, whether it's James who's not quite ready, whether it's this guy that has gone into detail, and no matter how many we get, we will acknowledge each and every one on the podcast every single time we get one. Because I'm with you. I believe that there is a lot more to this. I do. hail@hailtalkradio.com. While I'm on and I've got this on your screen, our Instagram account got hacked. Deep joy. So the new one is at The Rob Weston Show. You've not followed it yet.
Not you're right.
No.
I'm not going to get away with this.
No, you weren't. Never going to happen. Follow us. Share us. Get people involved. I will say this, and I say it every time, but it matters. It matters, and it means that more people get to see this. Hit the... do you know I had a little thing with this all on? No. Hit the like, the share, and the subscribe button. The more likes we get, the more YouTube will give this to other people. And I'm sure you'll agree, this is an important topic. They are all important topics. Not to mention, we're really good looking and quite, entertaining. They are important topics. So, like, share, subscribe. Follow us on Instagram. I'm talking to you.
I am. I'm looking.
At The Rob Weston Show. And email us, hail@hailtalkradio.com. And every one, a few scenarios, a few questions to put to you. If you can relate to any of this, or this has happened to you, male, female, whatever, let us know. I think we're actually going to be surprised that there are going to be a lot of people that relate to this. I know a lot of people relate to this.
Yeah, I want to give people that opportunity. I mean, we've always given that opportunity for other things, but this specifically, I really want to give that opportunity. I want to test the water a little bit, and I think it's a great idea. Like you say, we'll read them out.
I think to say to somebody that can't say to a friend, that can't say to a parent, whatever, that can't say this happened, this is happening, to give those people the acknowledgement that they deserve.
Absolutely.
To me, massive.
Yeah, it is. It is.
I think ultimately, whoever this guy is, I hope he's listening, and I hope he takes on board that, one, he isn't alone, that, two, he has nothing to be ashamed of, and three, truth dies in silence. Silence supports the oppressor. It only helps the oppressor. Don't feel pressured into doing something you're not ready to do or you don't want to do. It's entirely up to that. Listen, this is on you.
How many scenarios do we hear of this, though, where it's all about hindsight, it's all about, if only we'd known. The only way you do know is when people talk about it. people aren't talking about it and being silenced, then we end up back in the same circle that we're talking about.
Exactly. Which is why I'm saying the silence just... You, as a person, have been misunderstood for how many years? Stop it. Have the relationship with your mum and dad that you were supposed to have. Have the relationship with your brothers and sisters that you were supposed to have, that you always were supposed to have and always wanted. Stop denying yourself that relationship because of the upset and whatever else this is going to cause with other people. And it would not surprise me if either James or this guy or anybody else says to somebody, this happened to me. It would not surprise me if some of these people said, I did wonder.
Yeah.
A bit like being gay. Well, we did.
Well,
there were
assumed,
signs.
But yeah, it was there.
Yeah.
But again, this is why I was saying, I was trying to close up or whatever, but this is what I'm saying about how many times does this go around and around people's minds and people, because the silence is definite, isn't it?
Completely.
You know, and that's why I'm saying about, you made the point already about getting more people to come in and email about this. This could open a lot more doors. This might have a lot more unnamed emails,
yep, but
it will show that, for me, I'm not so much about the feeding back to them. I'm more about them feeding into us.
Completely.
And that's what I would like to see.
Yep.
Let them have their opportunity to say it, you know, and to see it. And I think, for me, as upsetting as it will be, and as difficult as it will be to discuss between us, giving them a voice is even bigger. That's the big piece.
It is. It really is. And, as I said, we will acknowledge each one. We might... Before you start, I'm not suggesting that we're going to be able to read the details of every single email we get, but we will acknowledge every single email. Mm-hmm. We will mention you by name. We will say, we've had an email from Sarah, Beth, Jamie, Oliver, whatever. It's time people were heard. And if nothing else, remember that silence helps nobody but the oppressor. It does.
True.
Anything else you want to add on this subject?
No, I think very interesting, very thought-provoking.
Very heartbreaking.
Heartbreaking, yeah.
Very heartbreaking.
I really believe there's more to this with others. I really do. I think the only last point I do want to make is I would love it if James could come back and discuss further with us. I hope sincerely that he gets the opportunity to see this show, hears this story, and may give him the support, the function that he needs, whether he does emailing or not.
Yeah.
You know, he could even email again with another succinct comment and just say, guys, listen to it, help me. You know, it's really helped me think. Or if he wants to open up more, that would be my final point of it.
Whatever your situation is, whenever you're ready, if you want to talk to us about this, I'll put the email address again on. There we go. hail@hailtalkradio.com. I will also say this, and this is not a caveat I often give. We don't reveal full names. So, if you don't, don't get me wrong, I love to hear where people are listening. James didn't sign his email off with a location. The second email isn't signed, it's just I've put unsigned because there was no signature at all. Don't think that because I haven't put my full name or where I live, they won't read it. We will. Yes, we love to know that people in New York, because we've had some emails from New York, that people are listening worldwide. We do, and it's nice to know that we are being heard. But if that's the thing that stops you emailing in, email anyway. Take it off. We're never going to reveal who you are. We're never going to give you details out on air. It's not going to happen. This is a safe space, and if we can help you, that's what we want to do. hail@hailtalkradio.com, at The Rob Weston Show on Instagram, which I know Winnie's about to just get his phone out and start looking at.
I am.
I will put some numbers at the end of this video for places in the UK and the US. I can't do it for every country because there's a lot of countries. But if you are needing help, don't sit in silence. Get some help. Seek help. Speak to somebody. You will be surprised how many people are more willing to help than don't want to know. You really will. hail@haletalkradio.com. Numbers at the end. And until our next episode, whatever you can be, try and be kind. If you've been affected by the subject matter of our latest video, please find below some helplines that may be able to help. The Rape and Sexual Abuse Support Line run by Rape Crisis England and Wales. You can call their helpline on 0808 500 2222. That's 0808 500 2222. Or you can use the online chat facility on their website. The NSPCC's helpline is 0808 800 5000. That's 0808 800 5000. There's also the 24-hour free phone National Domestic Abuse Helpline that's run by Refuge, and you can contact them on 0808 200 247. That's 0808 200 247. You can also contact your local police force or dial 101 for non-emergencies. Please remember, in an emergency, always dial 999.